Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm a contributor and associate editor at Northern Slant. I'm really delighted that Nandi Jola has agreed to spend some time with us today. Nandi's a poet, storyteller, a playwright and facilitator. Her poetry has recently appeared in Fortnight magazine and her debut poetry collection will be published in 2022. Nandi's play Partition was filmed this year and she's also been working on an exhibition to be hosted by the Imagine Festival. Nandi, it's great to be with you today. Thank you for joining us here at Northern Slant. I was lucky enough to see you at a very vibrant East Side Arts event earlier this year. You were appearing alongside a host of other artists and writers. I remember the event as being full of determination and ambition for artists in Northern Ireland, but we know that the pandemic has been a really hard time for everybody who's working in arts and culture. And I wondered, would you tell us just a bit about how it's been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was working in schools. I was out there in the community, getting up every day and going to work, and everything just stopped. I remember the first emails kind of, there were the uncertainties. And at the time, beginning of 2020, I didn't even know what Zoom was. I haven't been on Zoom, so I was quite reluctant, I must say. And I kept having this optimism that, oh no, things will go back to normal. Then I kind of had to go on Zoom because I realized I wasn't going to end if I didn't learn. So it was quite strange just to see everything just shutting down and then everything kind of reappearing again, but in a way that was very static and unreal. So that's how I kind of describe it. It was strange not being in the classroom or not being in a community center or within a festival, but still maybe trying to get some normality through doing stuff on Zoom.
And you seem to have been very productive during this time as well. So when the balance changed and you weren't able to get into schools and do that sort of work, or have the same level of engagement on Zoom as you would have had in person, did you write more in that private time?
Yeah, I found being online is, if you're there for 2 hours, there's no traveling involved in that. There's prep, of course, but the traveling side of things saves you time. So I really found that I was very productive. I was getting a lot of commissions and I was doing a lot of writing for those commissions. So it was, it's one thing writing and then it's one thing being seriously writing. So I find that the time that I did have was to write constructively, which was the best thing, because I would write sometimes and I would put things away. And of course, I wouldn't have time in normal times, be traveling a lot, and then I would never see maybe that piece of paper again. But because of this pandemic, I was very strategic in sense that I was writing for something.
Well, do you want to take us through those commissions that you've been working on?
Yeah, I've quite had a few. So the first commission was to write a play, and it was part of the sixth project with the Arts Council and Brass Neck Theatre. So there were 6 writers, 6 actors, and the play had to be 6 minutes. So I wrote one called Partition because I thought 2021, what's happening in Northern Ireland? And it was the centenary. So I thought I'd bring my own understanding of it, but also write it from a Black person's perspective. So listening to everybody's argument about the partition and what my reply would have been. So I don't want people to think that I'm trying to write about the partition. No, it's my own take about the partition from what I've heard. So it's my kind of, yeah, I agree with you on that one. Yeah, I agree with that. With you on that one too. So I kind of see everybody's perspective in the play, which is great. But also, I just wanted to leave it with the note that, okay, now, how can I, as a Black person who lives in Northern Ireland and the generation that's coming after, shape the future?
And I mean, the next question, Nandi, has got to be, I know this was filmed in this year, which must have been a difficult process in itself in the pandemic time. How are we going to be able to see Partition?
At the moment, I know that it's part of the Arts Council Commission, and it was, it was Brass Neck that I was commissioned by. It's been directed by Emily, who has done an amazing job. Initially, I think it was supposed to be an online viewing, but now there's talks of maybe it's going via the BBC channel, which is like it'd be fantastic for me as a writer. So I'm not sure still how it's going to be aired, but if it goes through the channels of the BBC, it would be great.
Well, please keep us posted on that.
I will.
So you've told us a bit about these commissions and the presumably the deadlines that you've been working towards. You've also told us that you've got an exhibition planned for the Imagine Festival next year. So that's a bit of a scoop for us in Northern Slant. Is there anything that you can say about that at this stage?
Yes, I mean, I have a lot of things that are happening in the pipeline. So I've worked on other commissions, and this is part of how I maybe got to the Imagine Festival. This year I was part of a panel with them. I've done 3 events on the Imagine Festival of 2021. So I did Letters with Wings, which is a poetry collective that I co-founded with Viviana and Maria McManus, Viviana Forientio. So we actually started Letters with Wings with thinking about other poets and writers that are in prison around the world. And we kind of felt, not that we were imprisoned in any way by the pandemic, but we were restricted. So as writers, how do writers respond when they feel that they're being restricted? So it's not to compare the two, but we were just looking at ways of communicating that message through. So Letters with Wings, we write letters, poetic letters to other writers and prisoners around the world. So we did that for the Imagine Festival. We also, myself and my daughter, both poets, we did a poetic response to Like Water, which is a ballet dance movement, includes a South African poet and with the English ballet, which was absolutely fantastic. So to watch that and to give a poetic response, just using our own poems. And then the third event I did was with Colin Hazard, and it was just a poetry reading. So I think Imagine Festival kind of will not, forget me for a long time. So as soon as it finished, I kind of approached them and I said, could I use the platform for my own exhibition? And they were delighted. They said, yes, we were happy enough. So I'm kind of working on curating that myself. And I was saying to yourself that funding was the thing that I'm looking for, because even Imagine Festival is running on, on charitable donations and things like that. So we don't have certainty when it comes to funding. But the exhibition would be part of my book, which is getting launched by Doyle Press in the summer and spring of 2022. So then it'll be something that will flow from that. Some of the poems will go with the images on the exhibition. So yeah, I mean, 2020 was quite a fruitful year in terms of being a writer, working on the commissions. I've been commissioned by the Arts Council to go on Brussels and represent Northern Ireland in Transposé Festival in September. So I had to write a poem that'll go on the public transport in Brussels. And then Ambiguities, which comes out in 2022, is going on the jukebox, and then it's going on tour to Paris as well. And then I'm trying to remember the other 2. I know that there was a poem that I was writing for Her Story, IE in Dublin, and that one it's on their website already, which is one I will be sharing later on. And it's a poem for Jerusalem Women's Center, and it's with a Palestinian poet as well, just writing about conflict. So it's interesting, that commission, because they were looking for a poet, a Northern Irish poet. And I love the fact that now I'm a Northern Irish poet. So how, we change from being a migrant to being a poet and then being Northern Irish. So that's the kind of language that I want. And that's the kind of language that I did achieve in the end.
So that's really some brand new writing on that theme. But you've got your debut poetry collection coming, as you said, from Derry Press. It's called Home Is Neither Here Nor There, and that seems to be a great theme that you're developing. But where you've come from, where you are, where you're going, and who you represent, and what home means. Could you tell us a bit more about the debut collection?
Yeah, I'm still working on the manuscript. It's not final because I still keep writing and adding on. And says, they just keep them coming until we get to a point where we all agree that we've had enough now. But it's that theme of home. Where is home? It came actually in a conversation with my daughter, who was a toddler at the time. And I think we were going to South Africa, and I said to her, "We're going home." She says, "But we've only been home." And I'm thinking, oh, she must be thinking we're just going home in the car. So it's that notion that home is neither here in Northern Ireland nor in South Africa. So in me, it's in my writing. It's in, it's in memory as well. That's where home is, because I look at, I was saying that in 2 years' time, I would have spent more of my years in Northern Ireland than was. I've left South Africa when I was about 22. So it's always about being a custodian of memory and also being a guardian of that memory. So it's the memory of home there and home here. So I find sometimes that with the ambiguities in both the narrative of the stories and the conflict and where I come from, it's neither here nor there.
And is poetry the form that gives you most scope to and most space to explore that?
Yeah, poetry is my baby. It's yeah, poetry is my first love, and I always laugh. That it's the kind of an art form that won't make you rich. Not in this lifetime, maybe Maya Angelou age, but I'm not doing it for riches. It's the thing that has always been in my life, and when I look back now, it's the thing that I've actually stayed true to, because I don't know if anybody else who's is a writer or a maker or an artist, you kind of move from one thing to the next. And like, I'm a storyteller, I'm also a playwright, but poetry is the one thing that I've really enjoyed throughout the years, because I've been writing poetry from when I was a teenager, and it's a thing that sustains me. If I, wherever I go, poetry will always be that thing that will always be me. So yeah, I can say that poetry is my baby. Yeah.
And you're going back to study more poetry. You told me you're signing up for a master's at
Yeah. Funny enough, I was having a conversation with Micheál McCann. Myself and Micheál, we are mentors of poetry mentors with the 21 Artists of the 21st Century program, which is a centenary program by the Northern Ireland office. And Micheál has done his MA, he's doing his PhD, and now he's going into community as teaching poetry. And for me, I started with teaching, and then now I'm doing the formal qualification. So I'm kind of doing things back to front. And he was laughing at me and I was laughing at him. And I says, which one is the best? And Micheál, do you think you go and learn the thing and then you go and do it, or you just go and do it and then you learn after? So I don't think there's an answer to that, but I'm glad that I have so many years experience teaching creative writing. And now I have the opportunity to do my MA in poetry.
That's great. And do you? I mean, it sounds like you've got great hopes for the time at Queen's and just for the study itself. Have you thought about how it might affect your writing, how it might inform the next collection or the next commission?
Yeah, I personally think that it will give me structure, but also I'm writing from a place that I know, which is Africa. And sometimes I describe my writing as something between Belfast and Africa. And for that reason, because I'm writing about a culture that I don't know, and also writing about the culture that I know. Because when I write in my language, is a Xhosa, and then English becomes a second language. now that I'm going to do a formal education in English, I think it will change maybe some of my writing in terms of structure.
Okay. I know see that some of at least some of that time at Queen's is going to be private study and private research and reflection time, but you're also a performer, and there's some film of some very powerful performances and readings of yours that we can link to from Northern Slant. You're also a facilitator and a teacher, and that involves performance too. So, I was wondering how big a part of your poetry is about performance as well. How important is that aspect to you?
I think that's a difficult question, Jenny. You've got me there, because performing is an expression, but also writing is an expression. For example, in my one woman play that opened the International Lit Festival in Dublin last year, The Journey, it's poetic. It's a poetic expression, but it had to be performed, for it to make sense. But it's a storytelling as well that creeps into it. So I couldn't do, for example, like one of those what do you call those where you go on stage and you just rhyme your poems or you recite your poems. I just don't have that confidence at all, and I just think I'm just maybe too old for that. But poetry slam, that's what you call them, they always have, I've always had a fear of just doing those things, but I did do them whenever I was starting out. And I remember feeling that I'm just old for this. But what that has given me then, that experience, was that, you use the stage. You use the stage to express yourself. And with the, with performance, that's what you need. Your stage is your platform. So you use it, whatever poems you've written, if you put them on stage and you perform them, then they kind of amplify them. But in saying that, I'm happy enough to do a poem on a screen, on Zoom. So yes, performance is great if you have an audience as well. The audience kind of understands where you are, and they kind of, you bounce off their energy as well. So there's different ways of executing your work.
Yeah, I mean, I think, is there a particular kind of audience response that really helps you in your performance or that inspires other work?
It definitely does, yes. When you're on stage and you're performing, and then you get that buzz, and then you're kind of thinking, what else can I do? What else is there more I can do? So that's how I a good example of that. I shared a stage with the poet Lem Sisse, and he was using a lot of gestures and his hands. He uses his hands a lot, and I remember I was before him, but we had rehearsals, we had dress rehearsals in Amman, in the auditorium, and I remember watching him, studying him, and when I went on stage, I used my hands, and I've used my hands since, and same as when I did a storytelling session with Mara Menzies, I see her using the camera and coming up and backwards to it, and I just find that fascinating. So you kind of using yourself as as the performer, as the vessel of transporting your words and the message. So the audience kind of appreciates that, and they see, like, for me, the thing that I use when I'm performing is to switch from English to Xhosa all the time, and the audience responds so well, even though they don't understand Xhosa sometimes, but they respond to that. So yeah.
Okay, Nandi, so this is definitely not a poetry slam, but I wanted to make sure that you got the last word here. So thank you very, very much for talking to us, and thank you for agreeing to read a poem for us. So do you just want to tell us what you're going to read and then go ahead?
Yeah, certainly. So this is the poem it was one of this year's commission, and it was for Her Story IE, which is the website. And it's called Crossing Borders, and they were looking for a Northern Irish poet to write a poem, and then they had a poet from, I'm just trying to say. So this poem was for the Jerusalem Women Center. So it's called Crossing Borders. Crossing borders. The line can be crossed, walls can come down. Sky was never the limit, just infinite. Sea, a world of life, land, opens itself to us with its underground antennas, connecting and breathing us in and out encoded messages on tree trunks. Hear the silence of roses. See the seasons change the ebb of a bud springing into life. There was never a right time to look at regret. Peace is never too late, turned away or unwanted. I want us to hold our hearts, embrace change, for we are dust molded breath in fear, inhaling the world in our senses. We feed the brain, borders worth crossing, sky, a landmark of flight, invisible, like sea, land, inconceivable world below the surface. Olive branch for us into the cycle of infinite existence of hope.